The LSU Tigers return home to take on Clark Lee and the Vanderbilt Commodores. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game between LSU and Vandy. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. This segment brought to you by our friends over at MyBookie. Go to mybookie.ag, use promo code SECU at sign up to receive a special welcome offer on your first deposit. That's mybookie.ag, promo code SECU to get that special welcome offer today. The LSU Tigers return to Baton Rouge in their all-new gold uniforms as the Vanderbilt Commodores look to play spoiler and pull the upset Saturday night down on the Bayou. We are here previewing, predicting, and breaking down this game. I am Chris Phillips. Helping me do so, my good friend Dave Shumate joins me once again. Dave, what's going on? Appreciate you taking the time and excited to break down this game with you.
Yeah, we got a lot going on in Baton Rouge this week. We had, like you mentioned, the gold jersey reveal that is probably, I'm sure they planned way in advance. They're like, Vanderbilt, this will be a game we can definitely get the win, the gold jerseys. This could be a picture game. You know what I mean? Like, we want to take pictures in these because we don't wear them often. And you don't ever want to put, like, a picture hanging around the facility after a loss. So they probably thought Vanderbilt. But the Doors come in, already bowl eligible, hungry for that seventh win. LSU coming in, being outscored, CP, since the second quarter. Since the second half of the A&M game when they were up 17-7, they have been outscored, I think, 100-35 since the second half of the A&M game.
It's been utter domination.
Yeah. 100-35.
Isn't it interesting, Dave, too, we're at a point in the season where both teams are 6-4, right? Both are 6-4?
Yeah.
But how different are the vibes on each side with that 6-4 record, you know? Vanderbilt, you mentioned they're bowl eligible. I mean, they don't feel great, obviously, last time out.
Coming off a bye.
Yeah, but got throttled pretty good against South Carolina last time they were on the field. But coming off a bye still at 6-4, I mean, they're feeling great. Bowl eligibility secure.
You told me if you agree. Vandy looked like heading into that South Carolina game and even the Auburn game before, they looked like they were kind of hitting a wall. Didn't they? Like, if
they were kind of gassed.
They need that bye week. So it'll be interesting to see how they come out this week. Because, I mean, we remember we saw them the last time off a bye week. They beat Alabama.
Yeah, and then you mentioned LSU, obviously. The vibe's much different as they sit at 6-4. But you did mention gold uniforms, Dave, for the first time since 1998. They're unveiling. I do. I think they look good. I we had this conversation, obviously, off the air. You mentioned what are they wearing with them, I think is going to be
the lids and pants.
That's an important detail. I wonder, will they go yellow pants or will it be like a white, yellow, white? Will it be white, yellow, yellow?
It can't be yellow, yellow, yellow. It can't be. If that happened, and I'm going to give the administration the benefit of the doubt, that wasn't even a conversation. And if someone brought it up, they were immediately fired. It can't be. You look like a mustard bottle. I shared that picture on my show last night. They wore them in the Independence Bowl for Jerry DiNardo, and they wore the yellow lid, CP, yellow top, white pants. And I still thought that looked a little mustardy.
It would remind me of the West Virginia unis, the mustard yellow West Virginia unis, if you're familiar with those. So yeah, we'll see what they do. But that's kind of the point, I know, unfortunately for Tiger fans, Dave, that we're at with LSU season, that the uniform is the lead talking point going in this game and not playoff or title hopes. And that's the unfortunate part. Anyways, this game's going to kick off, Dave, under the lights for Vanderbilt, a 6:45 p.m. Central Time kickoff. They're on the SEC network down in Baton Rouge at Death Valley. Dave, LSU is a 7.5-point favorite. The over-under is set at 53.5. LSU leads its all-time series 24-7-1, and the last time these two teams met was 2020. LSU won that game 40-7. Last time Vandy beat LSU, Dave, you got to go all the way back to 1990 was the last time the Commodores tripped up the Tigers. Dave, as we dive into this matchup, and we were talking about the two different places that these teams are in mentally right now, because we were talking about, again, Vanderbilt, you're high and mighty, man. You're 6-4. You're bowl eligible, coming off a bye. You look at the rest of your schedule, we got two more opportunities to pull some big upsets and put more feathers in our cap when it comes to already, Dave, memorable 2024 season. And then there's LSU. Dave, it feels like LSU can't get to the end of this season quick enough. Like they just, all their hopes and dreams and aspirations, it's all out the window at this point. I mean, let's call it for what it is, right? College football playoff? Nope. SEC title? Nope. National title? Nope. You might not even go to a Florida bowl game at this point. I don't even think they care if they were doing that, right? I don't think the goal is to get back to the Cheez-It Bowl. So, the vibes of these two teams, Dave, they couldn't be further away from each other. And specifically from the LSU side, I just wonder, do the Tigers have anything left in the tank? And I know we talked last week about the Florida game. It wasn't necessarily an effort issue. It was an execution issue. But, Dave, don't you have to start to kind of question how fired up is this team going to be on Saturday night? That's what makes some of these games so hard to predict down the stretches. It's just like, are there guys with one foot out the door thinking about the draft? Like, are they taking it seriously with preparation? Like, how much does the name on the front of the jersey matter still in regards to today's player and today's game? I think that's a serious question to ask when it comes to LSU going in this game Saturday night.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a fair question. And even going into last week, off the Alabama loss, a spot they traditionally are not great in. I think it's a very fair question. You're going up against a Vanderbilt offense with Tim Beck, Diego Pavia, that it's assignment sound football. You can't just really roll out there and out talent them because, again, they run this spread triple option that makes you stop for a minute and think that half second. A guy like Savion Jones is sitting there reading. He's got to think for a minute. That's the great equalizer to being an out-athleted out there like LSU is going to be against Vanderbilt. And again, this isn't something LSU can just go through the motions Monday through Thursday when they're out there practicing. This is something Blake Baker and I know Bo Davis, again, a really good defensive staff. For whatever reason, they just hadn't been able to solve the quarterback run game in this one. And again, Diego Pavia, another example of that. So I think LSU, to win this game, they can't just roll the balls out. This is not that kind of game. They're going to have to be locked in preparation this week because this isn't just a drop-back Vanderbilt offense. It runs the same system as you. You're going to out-athlete them, out-talent them. This is a different system now. You have to go prepared. With that being said, I think the tape's been out a little bit more on Vanderbilt offensively since playing Auburn and DJ Durkin. I think they had a good game plan. South Carolina and Clayton White followed it. I would think Blake Baker would use that same map as well to some extent.
Yeah, Dave, you mentioned that. Diego Pavia, obviously, we're big fans of his, obviously, on this show. I mean, I'm a big fan of Diego Pavia's. What he's done, he's been a magician this year. It does feel like of late, to your point, the more tape that has gotten out, the more people are starting to catch up with this Tim Beck offense. There's a lot of motion, obviously. It's got the option concepts, if you will, that just a lot of eye candy. And then, of course, you got a guy in Diego Pavia that's your trigger man that can run it, that can make plays. And this dude, saw him in person earlier in the year, Dave. He's just a guy that just makes plays. Just bottom line. He's able to improvise, get things done. And I have concern, Dave, when it comes to LSU in that regard. I mean, the way they have not been able to stop quarterbacks who can improvise, who can move. It started with Marcel Reed. Then it went to Jalen Milroe. And I'm not saying Diego Pavia is Jalen Milroe, by the way. I'm just saying quarterbacks of this nature, these style of quarterbacks, have given Blake Baker and this Tigers defense issues. And the way they're trending, Dave, I'm concerned for the defense. I really am. I'm concerned for the defensive side of the football for LSU in this game.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Very, very much. There's a ton of concern. Like I said, giving up 100 points in the last, 2.5 games. So plenty to be concerned about. Blake Baker and them going to be earning their paycheck these next few weeks. I mean, again, Oklahoma, if they're putting up points against them next week, that's a conversation for another day. This is their last, you'd feel like, big challenge offensively. You feel like they should take on that challenge. That should be something Blake Baker should challenge the players. Like, hey, this is a real test, guys. We don't go against this offense much. So we're going to have to be locked in. And again, LSU just hoping to finish 8-4, which you're right. Like, start of the year, not start of the year after the USC game, but really after the Ole Miss game, I think people in the Arkansas game back-to-back, people thought they were going to go trend up. And since the second half A&M, it just hadn't been the same. Similar to Kentucky a little bit. It's like LSU never got off the bus or came back home from out of that locker room at halftime at Kyle Field.
Dave, on the flip side, I think you've made a great point here the last few days about we tend to be such prisoners of the moment. And we want to, when we're talking about these games, breaking out these games, go off of, well, this team did this last week, so they must be going to do this week. And it just doesn't work out that way. So I say all that to say, Dave, on paper, LSU's offensive line had the worst game they've had all season by far. 7 sacks allowed. If you dive a little bit deeper into that, though, and talking with some LSU folks, some of our LSU buddies, if you will, I don't know that was all on LSU's offensive line. Garrett Nussmeier's got to play better. He's seeing ghosts right now at times. He's not feeling pressure. He's panicking in the pocket even when there is a clean pocket. So you got to put some of it on QB1 as well. We saw what South Carolina's offensive line, Dave, did to Vanderbilt, pushed them around, able to run the football. Not being a prisoner of the moment, I do feel like LSU has the capabilities to do that, Dave. I feel like LSU can go out, this offensive line can have a big-time bounce-back game, establish a running game. They did that against Florida a little bit. Run the football. Garrett Nussmeier just – we keep waiting on Garrett Nussmeier to elevate his level of play, and it's not happening. If they can just get a solid Garrett Nussmeier, though, I do think this offense can have a lot of success against Vandy. I know Vandy coming off the bye week. I like Clark Lee a lot. But from that personnel standpoint, I think LSU should be able to lean on this Vandy defensive front and get some things going offensively.
No, I 100% agree with you, CP. If they can stay committed to it, because Caden Durham is a good running back, I think they can stay committed. If the interior of the offensive line, which I think if you were complaining about the LSU offensive line, as you should after last week, giving up 7 sacks to the Florida defensive front, that's where the holes have been. I mean, Garrett Dellinger's been out. DJ Chester, the center, hasn't been very consistent. You love your tackles, but in the interior offensive line, it's not been great. I mean, really go back to that second half of the A&M game in Alabama, blitzed that gap a lot and took advantage of DJ Chester. So I think you're right. They can't just live in passing situations because guys like Miles Capers for Vanderbilt does have an improved pass rush this year. You saw them get to Alabama a couple of times a couple of weeks ago. But I'm with you. I think you got to try to establish that run game because I do think you can lean on them. But LSU more so than they haven't been able to. They haven't committed to it at all. So some of that goes back to play calling with Joe Sloan.
And then it's back to Garrett Nussmeier, Dave. I mean, let me ask you this. What are you seeing from Garrett Nussmeier right now? What do you think he's got to do in this game? Because I look at him. We can always say the quarterback gets too much of the credit, too much of the blame. And it's very divided, Dave, from what I can tell in the LSU fan base when it comes to Nussmeier, because there's some people out there, they're done with him. They think he's a lost cause. There's others out there, Dave, that'll take it as far as, well, Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels and even Zach Mettenberger, they struggled in their first year, but their second, they won the Heisman Trophy. Like, I don't know if Garrett Nussmeier is on that trajectory, but I mean, how much of the struggles do you pin on him?
I mean, a good bit because he is the quarterback of the offense, but I do think at the same time, it is limited and as turnover prone as he has been. I do think some of it he just naturally forces stuff, and the kid gets frustrated. Which I'm with you. I think that's an issue in itself. I think that's just him, just as a personality. I mean, I remember when I was in Alabama, he's just a little kid with his dad running around. But I think that's kind of his personality. But we'll say the offensive line hasn't been great the last month, and that's where his trajectory kind of been down. Receivers are dropping balls. We've seen Chris Hilton jumping for balls, missed time he jumps when he shouldn't have them. I think that's what Brian Kelly was getting after him about. Offensive play calling, haven't committed to the run game. We all know a quarterback's biggest friend is the run game. I think some of it, not that LSU can't, they just haven't committed or established a run or even really tried. I don't know. But again, I mean, guess Garrett Nussmeier's to blame as well. I think it goes around. I think you can cut it in thirds, fourths, whoever you want to split it around and take blame on that LSU offense. It really has not been consistent. I mean, and to your point, even in the win against Ole Miss, it wasn't like Garrett Nussmeier was great. What was he, like a 53, 54% completion percentage? It had 2 interceptions. I mean, he played really well when he had to down the stretch. I mean, I still think one of the throws of the year is the 4th and 5 he converted Aaron Anderson to tie it up on to go into send it to overtime. So you see the ability, but I think it goes back to what you kind of thought a little bit of the year. He gave you a little bit something to lean on, gave you the little crumbs to go follow him in the middle of the year to make you a little fired up about him. But in the offseason, CP, we all kind of said the same thing, even going back to see him playing against Georgia in the SEC championship game in 2022. He's going to have his highs. He's going to have his lows. You just got to live with it. And you hope you have a supporting cast and a run game around him to help. And they haven't had that either. So I think you could blame. I think it goes all the way around.
Dave, Brian Kelly's not going to be fired this year. No matter what happens. I think that's safe to say. There's 71 million reasons why that's not going to happen. But man, This feels like a can't lose, Dave. It really, in the positioning you're in, at home, at night. If you're an LSU fan, you obviously don't even feel like Vanderbilt is in the same stratosphere as you as a program, which I don't think is an unfair feeling to have. I mean, they've got to snap out of their funk, right? I mean, it just and then you got the videos of Kelly on the sideline, which I think those things got blown up because you lost the game to Florida. It just something's got to give, Dave. I mean, something's got to give here. You're either going to rise to the occasion and play some of your best ball you play. Because, I mean, all due respect to Vandy, like this is your most manageable contest you've had in weeks, right? Even last week against Florida, you had to go to the Swamp, and that was a tricky game. If you can't come home, Dave, and bounce back the right way, and again, we questioned at the beginning the motivation factor and how fired up are you for this game, and you're in front of your home crowd and you're rocking the gold jerseys. I feel like we're going to learn a lot about the character of this LSU football team under Brian Kelly on Saturday night. We're going to learn a lot about the DNA of this team on Saturday night.
Because you lose this game, you're staring at 7-5, 6-6 in the face, depending what happens against Oklahoma. Yeah. I mean, that's it. Who would have told
at that point, when you've lost, 4 in a row, what hopes are there that you're going to pick yourself up off the mat and even show up in the
final against Oklahoma? Right. Yeah, that's a toss-up at that point. You're right. But it's wild to say, if you had told LSU fans if they beat Ole Miss, they potentially could be going into the Oklahoma game fighting for 7-5. They would have laughed you out of the bar.
Yeah, I would have. I would have laughed you out as well. So
yeah, I mean, you essentially were telling them they weren't winning another game. I mean, after Arkansas, you weren't winning another game.
Yeah. But again, from the Vandy perspective, Dave, I mean, you can be giant killers once again. And I say giant killers like this is some 30-point spread. It's a touchdown spread, Dave. I mean, that alone
when it is, but you're right. From an actual 2024 LSU team versus a 2024 Vanderbilt team.
I mean, that alone speaks to that alone speaks to, the where these two programs are. The fact that you're at home and you're only favored by a touchdown over Vanderbilt. So again, Vandy going to try to come in though from the logo standpoint. You mentioned it would be a really big upset. I feel like going to Death Valley at night. And I feel like, Dave, if LSU loses this one, I kind of have to retire my whole Death Valley at night spiel because
I totally forgot. That's another total thing that would have been turned a complete 180 over the middle of the year.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I do wonder about atmosphere, crowd, how fired up are they going to be? And I mean, we mentioned this early in the season when we were talking about Florida and the Swamp, Dave. I mean, could Death Valley become a negative for the Tigers if they're not playing well? And you feel like kind of almost your crowd is maybe not against you, but just like the tension in that building and the negative, nasty emotion, like could it hurt LSU? I don't know. It's very unsettling feelings right now down in the Bayou. Dave, that being said, let's go ahead and lock in our predictions, our pick for this one. I'll let you start. LSU, Vanderbilt. Who do you see coming out on top Saturday night in Baton Rouge?
You obviously see a path to victory for both teams, CP. I'm with you. It's just something rides with me in my head, or should just say stays with me in my head. That's Vanderbilt from a momentum stand, from a who's going to be more interested just off the surface level. Yeah, you got to give them the check box there. I think they have a little bit more to play for. But also, right, from a Brian Kelly tenure standpoint, man, you can't go 7-5, 6-6 in year 3. I think you've already lost some of the fan base a little bit after the last 2 weeks. You can't lose to Vanderbilt at home. Again, I see a path to victory for both teams. I trust Blake Baker. I think Vanderbilt's going to play as good as they've played on defense. Not Vanderbilt. LSU play as good as on defense as they have in a while. And I say back in the past 3 weeks. I trust Blake Baker. I trust Bo Davis. I think they have obviously the athletes to limit Diego Pavia and them. It could be a little bit of an adjustment in the first half. I just trust that game plan. I do think LSU will score on Vanderbilt's defense. I do think they'll come up with a good enough game plan. I think Vanderbilt's going to have to go score 30 to win this game. They could. I just trust Blake Baker with his back against the wall off, 2.5 really bad performances. The second half A&M, Alabama in this past week. I don't know. I just think – I wouldn't say put it together this week. I don't think it's going to be necessarily pretty. I just think they win. I just have a hard time seeing them losing this game at home. Not saying it's going to be pretty. I think it could be a really close football game. I mean, not even denying it at all. I think this could be a really close football game across the board. I think LSU wins this game 34-23.
So LSU wins, LSU covers. Okay, yeah. At the home field at night. Dave, I love the pick. I'll tell you this, and I love what Clark Lee and Vanderbilt have done, and I think you and I both agreed that there was there was arguably nobody in the SEC that needed a bye week more than Vandy, just to catch their breath and kind of regroup and reassess and reevaluate and go from there. And so coming off the bye week, I do expect Vandy to have a good plan, to play well. I think Diego Pavia is going to make some plays in this game. I agree with you, though. I do trust Blake Baker in this spot, but also, too, what I trust the LSU offensive line to bounce back. I really do. I'm not going to get lost in the craziness of allowing 7 sacks against Florida, and I understand that, they did not play their best. I think some of that, again, was on Garrett Nussmeier as well, panicking in the pocket, putting the offensive line in some bad positions. I think the offensive line plays much better. I think it's kind of similar to the South Carolina game, Dave, from a standpoint. I think they're going to be able to get a run push and actually run the football, which is something that they haven't been able to do a lot. I think Garrett Nussmeier is going to have his Garrett Nussmeier moments, but you got to think they're going in this one just saying, hey, Garrett, just don't turn it over. Don't make those critical mistakes, and we're going to win this football game. I think the running game will open up some things. I think, to your point, they're going to be able to score on Vandy. And I think LSU, too. Listen, the LSU can very well lose this game. There's no question in my mind they can lose this football game. They can get beat. But I believe coming home in the gold uniforms, as silly as that may seem to some people, it may sound gimmicky or what have you. I think at this point, if you're LSU, you're looking for any reason to be fired up to play a football game. I think those gold uniforms and just coming home at night could serve as that reason. And I think it will serve as enough reason for LSU to come out, play some of their better football they've played. I think LSU wants to feel good again. How do you do that? Go win a game. I think LSU wins. I think LSU covers, Dave. I love LSU minus 7.5 in this spot. Give me Tigers 31, Vanderbilt 17. I think they get a 2-score win. I think Blake Baker's defense is, again, going to force Vandy into some third and long situations and maybe force a couple turnovers as well and help out that offensive side. But I think LSU gets a much, much, much needed win because, to your point, Dave, last thing you can do, year 3 of Brian Kelly, is go 7-5 or 6-6. They all realize that, and I think the Tigers will get a much needed win. So, guys, what do you think? Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? How do you see this thing playing out when LSU and Vandy do battle Saturday night at Death Valley? Guys, that's going to do all for us. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Again, make sure you like, subscribe, turn notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms as well as our website, SECUnfiltered.com. For Dave Shumate, I'm Chris Phillips. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in, and we will catch you on the other side.